All right. So we are now recording. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Irini Zormpa. I am the community manager for the UNIVERSE-HPC project, which is a collaboration between the universities of Edinburgh, Oxford, and Southampton, and Imperial College London and the British Computing Society. And we are funded by Excalibur. So, Universe HPC stands for Understanding and Nurturing an Integrated Vision for Education in RSE and HPC. So, as you can imagine, we're very interested in training for research software engineers, which is what RSE stands for. For people who are not familiar, I will be using that acronym a fair amount. Um, so, I just wanted to give you a bit of a brief overview of the goals of the project. So, they broadly fall across four themes. So competencies and skills, learning pathways, course development and delivery, and community support and contributions. So in terms of competencies and skills, we work to identify what these are that are required by RSEs as they progress in their careers. And we try to understand where these are already being taught. And we are achieving that through surveys and discussions and conferences, both national and international. In terms of learning pathways, what we do is try to define different curricula, learning pathways, and delivery mechanisms to provide RSE training. We're quite open as to what those curricula or courses are. So they can be taught courses, self-paced learning, online learning, etc. And we are working towards that by analyzing what existing courses already do and also collecting people's thoughts and feedback through bird of a feather sessions at various events. Um, in terms of course development and delivery, we have been working to develop modules that we think are missing from the current offering and also in packaging existing and these new modules into different formats, which we then also pilot to identify the most effective ways to deliver those. So that has been greatly facilitated by the Gutenberg training platform, which is open source and uses Markdown. I will be saying a couple more words about Gutenberg in the following slide. We also work on community support and contributions by providing professional networking opportunities and fostering peer support for RSEs. And we hope to develop a community of maintainers for our open materials. This is facilitated by a program of seminars such as this one, hackathons like the one we'll have next week, and other events. All of this is underpinned by our commitment to equality, diversity, and inclusion. So I mentioned that we have a hackathon next week. It is going to be on Friday, the 12th of July, from 10 until 4:30. The goal of the hackathon is going to we'll be focusing on our course materials. So we'll be looking at two kind of pathways of infrastructure and pedagogy. So in terms of infrastructure, we will be working on enhancing Gutenberg. This is the new training platform I mentioned just before. At the moment, we are working on improving the accessibility of this platform, but also making any other enhancements or improvements that are needed. And in terms of pedagogy and implementing good educational principles in the lessons that we have been working on, making sure that everything has learning objectives and in general makes sense from a pedagogical point of view. You can try Gutenberg out on this link over here, and I very much encourage you to sign up to attend our hackathon next week. If you are in Oxford or near Oxford, you're very welcome to join us in person, but we will also have a lot of people joining online. You also don't have to stay there for the entire day. If you'd like to join, but don't quite have 6.5 hours to spare, if you could join us for the morning or the afternoon, that is also very, very welcome. And with that, I will stop talking and give the floor to the person you actually came here to listen to today, which is Philly. Philly is a research software engineer at the University of Southampton, the Southampton Research Group. And she is also responsible for leading the training offering and will tell us today about the challenges that her group have faced the last few years and also how they address those challenges. So please welcome Philly.
Thank you. I'll start sharing my slides.
Perfect.
Okay. So yeah, thank you so much for having me here today. My name's Philly Broadbent, and as I've been introduced, I work at the University of Southampton for the Southampton Research Software Group, where I'm a research software engineer and also training lead for the group. And I've been in the research software group for 2.5 years now. Before that, my background's in psychology. I did a PhD in psychology at the University of Southampton as well, before deciding I was actually more interested in the software side of things and moving over to this new role. So today I'm going to be talking about the experiences of the Southampton Research Software Group, running training in computational research skills at the University of Southampton. I'll talk about the successes that we've had, but also about some of the challenges that we've encountered along the way, from securing funding for the courses to teaching academics from a wide variety of disciplines, and switching between training online and in person. For all of the content of this talk, I'm drawing on my own experience as the current training lead, but I've also had some really helpful discussions with Steve Crouch and Pip Grills, who have really heavily influenced the training that our group offers as well. So a quick overview of what I'm going to be talking about. First of all, I'll give a brief history of the software training that's been run at the University of Southampton. So that's going back nearly 10 years to the first software carpentry training, right through to the current day. I'll talk about the current state of our training offering, considering the courses that we offer, our funding model, and some feedback from the staff and students at the university. Then I'll discuss 3 of the main challenges that we continue to experience and some of the solutions that we've implemented to address them. And I'll finish off by talking a bit about what's next for us. Where do we plan to go with training at the University of Southampton? So first of all, pre-2020, this was before my involvement in the group, so this information was very kindly provided by Steve Crouch. So starting about 10 years ago, around 2014, the SSI, the Software Sustainability Institute, was receiving a high level of demand for software skills training, but at the time they only offered software consultancy. But this demand kept growing and growing, and they decided that actually they were going to change their scope and offer training as well. So as part of this, the first software carpentry course run at the University of Southampton was in 2015, and that was funded by the Software Sustainability Institute. And then between 2016 and 2020, software carpentry was delivered at the University of Southampton twice a year. It was open to any students and staff at the university, and it was completely free to them, funded by the SSI. And these software carpentry workshops took the form of a 2-day in-person workshop, about 7 hours a day, on Highfield campus in Southampton. In around 2017, 2018, they branched out and started teaching data carpentry as well. So for people who might not be familiar with the content of those courses, software carpentry was generally comprised and still is generally comprised of Bash, so automating tasks using Bash, version control with Git, and building programs with Python. And data carpentry was comprised of introduction to spreadsheets, Open Refine, and then data analysis and visualization with R. So throughout this time, there was a high reliance on funding from the Software Sustainability Institute. But there was feeling that we needed to move away from reliance on SSI funding and think about different sources of funding for the training. And so we began delivering courses for Centres for Doctoral Training, or CDTs. And the first of these that we delivered training for was the Next Generational Computational Modelling Group. And that was in 2015 to 2016. But then from 2020, we really branched out and started selling our training to more CDTs, also to the Doctoral College at the university and the Centre for Higher Education Practice, and they're responsible for providing training for PhD students and staff respectively. In addition to this, we've been providing training for external clients, and throughout this process, we have mostly stuck to the carpentries materials, but we have diverged from them in a couple of ways to better suit our learners' needs and also the instructors' preferences. So overall, a lot has actually stayed the same in the last 10 years. As I mentioned previously, the same software skills are being taught in these courses, the same core fundamentals, and we're still seeing the same high level of demand for basic skills training across the university. Whenever we deliver novice courses, we always get full or nearly full courses, which is great. Some things have changed. So we're seeing now more demand for intermediate and advanced skills, which makes sense because more people have been trained at a basic level. Also, a big change has been delivering training online rather than in person. And now we're seeing more and more researchers using computers in ways that they haven't before and requiring training in order to do that in the best possible way. So where are we now in terms of the training offering that the Southampton Research Software Group has? Well, up until this point, we have taught 49 workshops and trained more than 1,000 postgraduates, staff, and industry researchers. And that has included training for 8 CDTs, as well as for external clients. And our current aim, which hasn't changed so much over the last 10 years, is to help researchers write, share, and publish reliable software, develop robust data analysis pipelines, and improve the productivity and reproducibility of research outputs, which sounds pretty important to the whole to the core principles of research. So that's what we aim to do. And in terms of the concrete courses that we currently offer, we construct workshops to meet the needs of the CDT or whoever our client is, and these workshops are comprised of a number of the lessons that are listed here. So we could make a sort of software carpentry style course, but tailor it to the needs of the group. So if they require more software project management, we would add in that course. Maybe they want the Git and Bash courses, but then they think actually our students are going to be using R more than Python, so we can combine the courses to make a tailor-made course for the CDT or the client. And just as an idea of our current funding model, so we don't make profit on these courses. This is just covering the time of the instructors and the people organising the course. And this is a sort of sample costing for a 2-day software carpentry style course. And it works out to being under £50 per learner per half-day session, which is considerably lower than most other training companies would offer. So we really feel we're offering good value for money in what we're doing. And I wanted to talk a bit about the feedback, not so much to sort of show off like we're getting good feedback, more just to demonstrate that we collect feedback before and after each workshop, and we collect feedback on each lesson to find out how the learners have found it, and then we hone the courses based on this feedback. And as you can see, in terms of the amount of content, difficulty, and speed of delivery, we've this information is from the last 4 years. We're now getting the majority of people saying that those metrics are about just right, and roughly similar numbers of people saying there's not enough content, too much content, it's too easy or too hard, or too fast, too slow. And I think there's always going to be some people like that, because we are catering to a really wide range of students and staff at the university. I wanted to share a few quotes from the students' feedback as well, because I think they really illustrate that what we're doing is making a real difference to people's research, and especially when it's if you've found a course quite difficult to teach, or it seems like it's not going so well, it can be really nice to get this information to realize, you know, what we're doing is making a positive difference. So one of my favorite quotes is from the BASH course, where this person says, if I'd attended this session at the start of my PhD, I'd have been done in half the time. And someone in the article says, this content will be really helpful for my PhD, thank you. So just thought I'd include a few quotes there. So that's highlighting some of the positive elements of our training, some of the successes, but of course we've had some challenges as well. I want to talk about 3 main challenges that we've faced. Funding, training researchers from different backgrounds, and delivering our training online. So firstly, I'll talk about funding. So to outline some of the problems, the Southampton Research Software Group needs to recover 100% of our costs. So we can't offer training for free. We need to get the funding from somewhere. And we found that the continuing professional development budgets within the university tend to be weighted towards soft skills training rather than technical skills. It can also be really difficult to convince budget holders at the school or faculty or even university level that they should be spending their budget on us. Understandably, there seems to be a bias to spend the budget on people internal to the school or faculty rather than looking externally for training. And that might make complete sense. You know, if someone in the department knows the specifics of the training that's required, then they might be able to provide more tailored training. However, in many cases, our training has been developed over so many years, might actually be able to provide those skills in a better way. Another potential issue is that often training funding needs to be included in the initial research grant bid. And this means that bid writers need to be aware of our training really early on. So this might be 2 years before the training even actually takes place. So to sum up, and this was a quote from Pip Grills, who I spoke to about this: everyone needs the training, but no one wants to pay for it. So obviously we haven't completely solved these problems. They're ongoing, but here are some of the solutions that we've put in place to try and mitigate them a bit. So we try to contact all possible CDT leads at the initial bid writing stage. So this involves looking out for when the calls for CDTs are out, contacting the people in the university who are responsible for coordinating the bids, and then getting in touch with each of the leads with a summary, kind of selling our training to them, telling them what we can provide, and giving them the information that they need to include us in their bid. We also try to keep a good working relationship with the doctoral college and the Centre for Higher Educational Practice. So this involves fortnightly meetings with one of the teaching fellows there, keeping them up to date on the courses that we can offer, and also asking them what their priorities are in terms of training. What sort of courses are they looking for, trying to meet their needs. And through doing this, we have been getting recurring training courses booked in with them about twice a year, available to all students and staff at the university. But in order to have the funds to look for people who are bidding for CDT money or to meet with the doctoral college, we need to include in our training course costings room for organisation and management to make sure that we're not actually making a loss on the training side of things. And finally, to try and stay ahead of the game, to try and figure out from university strategy and from UKRI grant calls which topics there's likely to be funding for training, and prioritise proactively developing courses on those topics. So as well as the funding side of things, we've also had a few challenges involving teaching researchers from widely different disciplines. How can we cater to the largest number of people? Some of the problems related to this are that researchers coming from different disciplines tend to have different ways of thinking about things and use different terminologies to describe the same things. So when we're coming in as trainers, we need to make sure that we're not using jargon or making sure that we clarify any terminologies that we're using, so that so that we can include the largest number of people possible in our training. A second issue is that throughout the training, we like to have examples from research so that the researchers can see how these concepts and skills could be applied to what they're doing day to day. But obviously it's impossible to pick an example problem that's relevant and interesting to all research areas. One example of this is that one of our training courses used to include an example from thermodynamics as an example for teaching Python object-oriented programming classes and instances of classes. But the moment that you mention thermodynamics to a social scientist or someone from humanities, they're going to switch off and think, no, this isn't for me. So we want to keep the examples accessible and not put anyone off by trying to introduce new concepts that aren't key to exactly what we're teaching. Thirdly, researchers generally aren't that motivated to learn to code. They're motivated to make their research better, but not actually in learning the ins and outs of coding. And finally, researchers have very varying levels of computer-related experience. So particularly for our courses through the Centre for Higher Educational Practice, anyone at the university can sign up. So we have lots of different levels that we are catering to. And I have a couple of quotes to illustrate this. These were quotes in the feedback form from exactly the same course. One person says, I think the lesson was a bit slow and could have covered more content. And someone else says, at times it was a bit fast for me. So trying to balance it out, cater to as many people as possible is a tricky challenge that we face in nearly every course. And some of the solutions that we've implemented to address this: first of all, where possible, tailoring the content to the subject area. So if we are teaching a CDT where all of the students are from biology, we would try and use courses that have biology-related examples. But where that's not possible, we try to have helpers on our courses that come from the same discipline as the learners. Obviously, within our group, we don't have people from a wide variety of disciplines. So what we've done is we've recruited postgraduate researchers who have strong coding skills. We had sort of a recruitment event last year where they came in, we talked to them about our training, and then asked them to apply for courses that they'd like to help with, telling us their domain knowledge and also their technical skills, which programming languages they know, and things like that. Thirdly, we try and do regular check-ins and adjust the pace to suit the majority. And then finally, we've tried to diversify our delivery methods so that the same course can suit a wider range of abilities. So what this looks like is we've put in some stretch challenges for more experienced learners. So if someone, for instance, already knows another programming language and is learning R for the first time, they might find the information about data types very obvious, but there'll be a stretch challenge there that they can go to and be challenged a little bit, hopefully won't get so bored. On the other side of things, we've also filmed some code along videos, which allows people to rewatch the content after the session. So if anyone did find it difficult, they can watch an instructor going through that content again. And these are in addition to running a live code along tutorial. And then the final challenge that I'm going to speak a little about is delivering training online. So post-pandemic online training has become the norm for our group. We've found that most of our clients request it and prefer it. And this is because they say students don't have to travel, particularly if CDT covers a few universities. Students don't have to spend the time and money traveling to one location to be together. You don't have to find and book a room that can accommodate everyone. And it could be argued that training online is accessible to more people. However, training online is also more challenging for instructors in several ways. And one of these ways is that it can be really difficult to determine whether the students are actually engaged with the session and whether the session has been a success. So maybe some people here relate to this situation. If you're in a Zoom or a Teams call, all the learners have their cameras switched off, and it can be really hard to know whether the session's going well and how everyone's finding it. One particular challenge in that instance is how you would assess engagement. If you're getting no feedback from your learners, they've all got their cameras and microphones switched off. How do you find out whether they're keeping up, whether they're enjoying it, how it's going at all? So we have some, we carry out the pre and post workshop surveys, like I mentioned before, but also we ask for verbal or written discussion, and just the easiest way is getting people to react to messages in the chat. So just putting a thumbs up on something, a really low barrier to interaction. And then as with the UNIVERSE-HPC materials, the tick boxes when exercises are completed are really useful for instructors to know how everyone's getting on going through the materials. Another way to assess engagement is to make learners turn their cameras on. And I was quite interested in this, in the sort of pros and cons of getting people to turn their cameras on. So I did a little bit of research into it as part of another talk. So I thought there are both pros and cons to it. So some of the pros or the benefits are that being able to see yourself with your camera on. This kind of reflects my background in psychology. I'm going to go a little bit psychological here. So being able to see yourself increases your self-monitoring, which increases self-control. And this means that when someone has their camera on, they might be able to show greater self-control in not checking their phone and concentrating on the training session. And this, another positive is that it makes the experience a lot better for the instructor. But surprisingly, there are actually some downsides to having your camera on. So there's a cognitive effort associated with self-monitoring, and this might reduce the cognitive effort that's available for learners to actually engage with the training, particularly if it's difficult content. Secondly, using the camera is associated with feelings of fatigue. And fatigue can, particularly over, say, a 3.5 hour training session, can mean that you're not able to take in the material at the end of the session. It's also worth noting that this sort of mental cost isn't equal for everyone. So there's been some research that's shown that using the camera increases the mental cost of self-presentation, particularly for women. And also for people who have social interaction anxiety. So based on all of this, I think we can say we probably can't mandate that people turn their cameras on, and it's probably good for some people, but not for other people. So a few other, well, I wouldn't say solutions to online training, but ways to improve online training that we found are to reduce the barriers to interaction. One way to do this is right at the start, make sure that learners know that they'll be asked to participate so that they can prepare themselves for this. So for instance, if the learners know that they might be asked to speak, then they might be able to take part in a quieter environment. Second way is to model the interaction that you're expecting between the instructors and helpers. So preparing the helpers to answer the questions and to show the learners how they can do that. Thirdly, getting everyone to interact in the first 5 minutes. So if people talk in the first 5 minutes, they're more likely to throughout the session. And I think this also applies to writing messages in the chat. And finally, making it really clear how you can respond to an instructor or flag an issue, and making this as easy as possible. So just putting a thumbs up or raising a hand on Teams. So the final challenging aspect that I'm going to talk about in terms of online training is keeping the learner's attention throughout the session. So we have some strategies that we use to improve attention. The first of which is setting expectations at the start to improve the learner's focus. So whilst taking part in online training, there's going to be notifications from emails going off, Slack, Teams, WhatsApp, and all of these things can seem more pressing than completing an online training course. Not only do these distract attention away from the training materials, but they also bring about an attentional switching cost. So some solutions to this are at the start of the course, tell your learners to turn off their notification, exit apps, put their phone on silent, maybe tell other people in their house or in their office that they're going to be focusing on this training course. A second way to improve attention is to consider engaging the learner's emotions in terms of storytelling or weaving a narrative throughout the course, because if some information is attached to an emotion, then they're much more likely to remember it. Thirdly, people pay more attention to things that feel personal to them. So personalizing the course as much as possible in terms of the domain, and also comparing the new information to known information so that this new information can be assimilated into the existing sort of knowledge structures that the learners have, rather than creating new structures. And finally, the last 2 points, I think in terms of these sort of 3.5 hour long training sessions, sometimes we forget to consider that we are all human, and our attention does have limits. So our attention span, it's generally only about 10 to 20 minutes for difficult tasks. So taking frequent breaks, and particularly online, being on Zoom or being on Teams can be more tiring than being in person. So considering having more frequent and longer breaks online than you would in person. So those are my thoughts about some challenges and solutions to online training. Sorry if I went a bit psychological on that. But so just a summary of everything. So since 2016, the Southampton Research Software Group has delivered training to more than 1,000 learners. One of the really interesting things that I found talking to other people is that the content of the training has mostly stayed the same, showing that the core fundamentals of novice software training really haven't changed. And while we've had quite a lot of successes in the Southampton Research Software Group in terms of delivering lots of training lots of people, we've also had some ongoing challenges, which include securing funding, teaching a diverse audience in terms of academics from many different backgrounds, and also adapting to online delivery of training. So what's next for us? Well, based on the feedback from learners, we're going to be pushing our intermediate training to make sure that academics have access to that slightly higher level of training if they require it. And also in response to demand from the Doctoral College in CHEP, we're going to be developing some data science courses, including an element of machine learning, which seems to be very popular at the moment. So those are our plans. And thank you very much for listening. I'm happy to take any questions.
Before that, I just want to thank you, Philly, for that great talk. I, for one, very much enjoyed the kind of psychological viewpoint on all of this. That's also my background, but I'll not talk about that too much. If we could all give Philly a round of virtual applause, if we can't give you physical applause for an excellent talk. And I will now stop recording.